obviously today formally announcing and launching the dates of this year's DFG Summit, which will be on the 27th of June and in Birmingham. Just really want to talk about why we did the first summit last year, but why we are now doing, hopefully this is going to be a regular thing. But just to kind of talk a little bit about why we do Summit. Obviously, at Foundations, we provide lots of opportunity for networking, bringing together practitioners, managers, commissioners. Obviously, we do that through the roadshows, doing sessions and webinars such as we're doing today. Is that opportunity to bring the sector together. Although they're fantastic opportunities to bring the sector together, what is often difficult in those formats and through the roadshows is really to discuss the real world issues that we often experience in the sector in terms of delivering the DFG. So the summit, and this is a definition of what a summit is that opportunity to bring together the leaders within the sector. And at Foundations, I know this sounds a bit twee, but as at Foundation, we do believe that everybody that's involved in the DFG delivery, from a strategic through to an operational practitioner perspective, have all got that potential to influence change and therefore, have got that potential to be leaders. So that summit is just that opportunity to bring together managers, practitioners, commissioners, people from the third sector who are working with people with lived experience who use the DFG to support their health and well-being, to actually come together to discuss a particular issue around the delivery of the DFG, so that hopefully through collaboration, through those discussions, we can go away, certainly at Foundations, and take forward some of the action that we can do to hopefully address the issues that we discuss in the summit. So just to give you a quick overview of the success of last year's summit. So again, it was in June, it was in Birmingham, and we had, I think it was around 120 practitioners. So there was technical officers, caseworkers, occupational therapists. We had commissioners, we had strategic and operational managers, and we had representatives from the third sector representing people with lived experience. The discussion point at the summit last year, apologies for those who attended, was around people like Robert. So the people with relatively simple needs, but tend to be the people that sit waiting for that assessment that leads to a DFG. So what we wanted to do, based on the work of Adaptations Without Delay, was actually bring together the sector, bring together those people that were interested in this issue, to look at how we could move the agenda forward, so to provide that ease of access to assessments for people like Robert with those relatively simple needs, who tend to be the individuals waiting the longest. So the day was split into two. We had some expert speakers, experts in the subject. So we have Vicky McCall, who's an academic who does lots of research around adaptations. We had Lauren Walker from an occupational therapy perspective from the Royal College of OT. Obviously myself, obviously from Foundations, but obviously being one of the authors of Adaptations Without Delay. And we also had Vicky Gale, who was the journalist who worked, I think it was probably about 18 months ago now, worked on the Channel 4 news expose around DFG weights. So those expert speakers kind of generated the call for action, really, exposed the issues around people waiting and set the scene. We then had 6 workshops where we explored opportunities for improving ease of access, looking at opportunities, challenges, and potential barriers, and what we could do to overcome those barriers to provide much more easier access. So we had a workshop around self and remote assessment, the role of manufacturers in the assessment process. We had a session around trusted assessor model and how you make that work really well. We had a session around the complexity around needs versus necessity. We had a session around mop-up assessment services, and also whether we needed to look at how we define consultation between local authority, between social care and housing. So what have we done following the summit, just to show that we just don't do these events and don't do anything with what we find? We have started to make some really positive moves forward. So I'm working with the Royal College specialist section of housing to look at how we can make occupational therapists feel much more comfortable when they're not involved in the more simpler DFGs. Obviously, OTs are a registered profession, so there are some issues around assessment and obviously involving others in that process. In terms of one of the findings from the summit was this need and recognition that we need more resources to make to provide a more proportionate response, and how we do that through the trusted assess process. And we have actually been working with 2 students from Salford University who have helped us develop a new competency framework based on adaptations without delay that looks at the skills and knowledge that we require for those 3 types of complexity, so universal, targeted and specialist. And later this year we'll have some more exciting news around how we're taking that new competency framework forward around trusted assessors. We identified that manufacturers potentially have got a positive role and could reduce some of the demands on social care around assessment. So hopefully this year we'll be starting some work with manufacturers and suppliers around how we can ensure that if we're going to do that, we can do that in an ethical way, and we've got some quality standards to support that if we're going to make that work. We discussed the need for support to help local authorities to work different, so looking at how we collaborate between social care and housing. And obviously, as regional advisors, we continue the work that we do with local authorities, supporting local authorities to work in that much more collaborative way, and obviously we'll continue to do that. The other thing that came out of the summit was this idea around pathways to consultation, again based on complexity, and having a visual tool that helps local authorities to look at, based on complexity, how we can have those different pathways to consultation, perhaps where we don't need individuals who just want to apply for DFG to necessarily have to go through the social care route, where that may not necessarily be appropriate. So again, we're just finishing off a visual consultation pathway based on complexity, and hopefully we'll be updating our webpage guide on Assess a DFG to include that visual tool on different ways in which local authorities could approach consultation. So that's just a little bit of an update around that we haven't just sat on the information that we gathered at the summit, and then we are pushing things forward and supporting the sector around those individuals with simple needs. So that's what we've done this year. So the theme for this year is children. The reason that we have chosen this topic, and hopefully this is good news for everybody that's here today, is as regional advisors, and we also did a bit of a poll on our DFG Champions Facebook page around kind of issues that we could look at for the summit, and children did come up. And as I say, as a team of 5 regional advisors, a significant number of our calls are around children. This here are just kind of 6 issues or 7 issues that we frequently deal with as regional advisors, working with local authorities, HIAs, adaptation services. So it's about, how do we make good decisions where, there's need for additional space, particularly where the property is deemed overcrowded. Get lots of questions around how do we ensure good practice, so we're not taking we are taking the least restrictive approach when we're designing adaptations. How do we cope with the issues where perhaps we might be using the DFG and the provision of adaptations as a bit of a sticking plaster that should be being addressed by other parts of the system, such as education, health and social care? kind of what's already been mentioned today, the thorny issue around children's cases don't always necessarily fit nicely within the 12 purposes for which you can use a DFG. Often they go above the mandatory DFG. So actually, how do we cope with and develop good practice and funding mechanisms within housing and social care to fund these high cost adaptations? Get lots of questions about how do we ensure that we've got really good practice in terms of those children that are transitioning from children's into adult services. Probably could do a whole summit on the next subject. And again, get lots of questions and queries around access to gardens and other purposes, and around actually what is necessary and appropriate. As I think, as Steve said it really well in his in the last presentation, it's about you want to be fair to the applicant that you've got in front of you, but you also want to be fair to everybody else in your local authority who might need to use a DFG. And then the whole issue around rehousing versus adapting, working with housing association, ensuring that they're making best use of the stock. And how do you get that decision right for both the family, housing providers and the grant system? So that's why we are doing the summit, because it's about bringing you together, bringing the sector together to look at how we can take forwards, look at those issues and take forward some solutions that we can take forward at foundations. So who should attend? Very quickly: technical officers, caseworkers, occupational therapists, any other practitioners that have got an interest around children's cases. We want operational strategic managers from across housing, health and social care. Again, we want commissioners, those people who can influence the money side of things and the commissioning of services. And then obviously third sector organisations that support those that with lived experience who need to access the DFG. Just really quickly, I won't go into this, but this is the format for the day. So there'll be we'll have a start of the day, we'll be getting together those experts that call for action. And then the idea is we'll have less workshops this year. We will repeat them. Some feedback that we got was that people wanted to attend more of the sessions, so it's likely we'll repeat them. And currently we've got these 4 themes: so necessary and appropriate, funding decisions, transition, and the role of technology. That might change a little bit as we kind of firm up the speakers, as we firm up obviously the content for those workshops. But those are the ideas that we've got since 6 months out from the actual event. As I say, it'll be an opportunity for networking. There will be hopefully space for around 150 delegates. The date is, again, the 27th of June, and it will be at the Birmingham Conference and Event Centre, which is just a couple of minutes from New Street Station by foot. Just to say, watch this space over the next 3 or 4 months. We will be providing lots more information